And we're recording. We're live. New
There
software,
we go.
new podcast, new look. Mike West in the house. Sound Portland podcast. I don't have to introduce myself because this is kind of like the new flavor of the podcast. If you're here, you already know who the fuck I am. So just thank you for listening in again. One of my favorite intros before I introduce the guest is that I did with Christian Woodford. And I imagined myself going to work listening to podcasts. And so I introed to Christian Woodford as, I know you're on the way to work, going to a job that you really fucking wish you didn't have right now. So we're going to entertain the life out of you. And that's kind of actually something that we were talking about before. So hopefully you find the humor in that. And if you are going to work, just remember why you're going to work. And it's not your boss's fault, I promise. It's not your boss's fault. It's always the S&C coach's fault. But anyway, welcome back to the New Look Sound Portland podcast. I am really, really pleased today to introduce you to a coach called Mike West. Mike has been in my world for probably the last couple of years, easily. And he's an awesome coach, awesome guy, and doing some amazing things down on the South Coast. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Sam. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome, mate. You're very welcome. So let's get straight into it, and we won't do too many convoluted backstories, but your journey is awesome, and I like your journey. So why don't you give the listeners a bit of a slice of the pie?
Or you don't want convoluted backstories, but you've asked me a question. I'm kind of full circle in that I started out in a gym working the reception and cleaner role, decided that I'd never be a coach or never be a PT because I didn't want to be the guy that starts at 6 a.m. in the morning and leaves at 10 p.m. at night. Like long term, that didn't sit well with me. So I decided to go into teaching PE and started work at 6 a.m. and finished at 10 p.m. anyway. Like most teachers do. And long story, bounced around a few things because fell out of that, didn't enjoy the love of that. And then coach, I've always been into sport, played football to a high standard, fairly high standard when I was younger, competed in athletics, sprinting, high jumping, fairly high standard, and probably neglected the fact that actually coaching is what I really enjoy, up until for most of my life, bouncing around looking for stuff. So then I started in coaching, started coaching speed, coached track athletes for quite a while, then got more into, seeing how speed, and that's kind of where I kind of fell into your world, was looking at how that track speed translated into, what you'd call sport speed. Because I couldn't read the book. Yeah, I wrote the book. I've read the book. Because I could see where the track stuff doesn't fit. Like having tried and failed to shoehorn track speed into team sport. Like you don't get 6 hours a week to do speed in team sport. So got into that, played around with it for a little bit. Worked with loads of athletes, worked with a load of Gen Pop, because I think Gen Pop teaches you a lot. Absolutely. I think you learn really fast with Gen Pop, more so than you do with, and I think I probably learned more with Gen Pop than I do with athletes, or have done with athletes. Around, and maybe this is probably for a different question, but more around like how people behave, how people respond, how react, the mental, the emotional, the different stresses, how that all fits in. Because I think when you work with even semi-pro athletes, everything's geared towards their sport, and you kind of overlook sometimes, certainly as a young coach or for a fresh coach, you overlook those sides of the coin, I guess. Then from there decided that needed, just one-to-one in, and working in teams wasn't quite, I wanted a little bit more than that. So this year opened a studio down here on the South Coast, which is a mix again, Gen Pop and athletes, with a little bit of rehab thrown in, which has started to become a bit of a passion. lower limb rehab.
Yeah.
That's kind of where we are now.
Yeah, amazing. Got loads of questions off. No, it's all good. I've got loads of questions on that because the like it's funny, PE teaching teaching not for you, but coaching for you. What was the biggest challenge and the thing that really kind of from your teaching that you were just like, I'm just not doing this. This just doesn't sit with me.
I think teaching, the issue I found with teaching is there's quite a lot of hoops you have to jump through to deliver it. And on the whole, certainly with the way it, in my opinion, others may differ, the way education has gone, certainly with a lack of, I'm going to say a lack of respect around physical education based on curriculum changes. Quite often in teaching, you weren't really teaching, you were crowd controlling, and quite often you're stood in front of a room full of kids that don't really want to do it. Because, and I think more so because of the conditions that are placed on it through education. You know, when I was in PE at school, I reckon 70% of my lessons were 4 cones and a ball and just go out and play. Like it was teachers understood and were given the scope to use their lesson as a way for kids to blow off steam whilst learning.
Did you have wall bars when you were in PE? And did you do gymnastics at school?
So no, I didn't do gymnastics at school. We did a little bit, but I went to an all boys school. So our curriculum was football, rugby in the winter, cricket, track and field in the summer, with a little bit of other, a bit of basketball, and a few made up games in between, which is some class stuff.
I'm going to be super woke because you basically said that men shouldn't do gymnastics now.
No,
like that.
No. And do you know what? I actually feel like it's a big missed opportunity.
I did gymnastics. I'm insulted by your term.
I think it's a massive missed opportunity, and I think the reason we didn't was not because it wasn't. We did a little bit early on because it's part of the curriculum, but I think it wasn't. It was all boys school with all male staff, and the expertise wasn't there. And which now, like I say, like the expertise. You kind of respect the fact that they didn't try and do something they couldn't do.
I get that
badly, but it would have stood me in really good stead when I went to university and I had to do gymnastics for 3 years and I had to do dance for 3 years, having not done it for my entire school life. Right? That's a baptism of fire.
I went to a private gymnastics club, and I'm full adrenaline junkie, so I was vault, like I was full vault, like like just send me down there. I'm, full handspring. 9 years old, like
and
no care.
No, and my 5-year-old does gymnastics. My 5-year-old does gymnastics, has done since he was 3, for the exact same reason. Pure adrenaline junkie, throws himself at it, loves it, and I can see the benefits of it. And having coached a lot of young athletes and a lot of semi-pro athletes, it's amazing how many of them did gymnastics when they were younger, and you can see such a difference in them.
And that's important. So I guess there's those restricted opportunities from the teaching side of things. It's quite restricting, and I guess if I was to make an assumption, is that probably why you avoided pro sport, or did pro sport ever cross your mind to try and get a job in pro sport?
I think early on pro sport did, because I think everyone considers that to be the golden egg. Like that's where everyone seems to want to go into pro sport, because pro sport is, you're like, it's almost like a badge of honor for the S&C coach. Like, and
expensive tracksuit.
Expensive tracksuit, and an expensive tracksuit for what you have to give up for it. And that's and we got probably the reason why, or more so the reason why it doesn't appeal to me, is I started coaching having already had a family. So I already had 2 kids, already had a wife. I live on the South Coast. We don't have many pro clubs down here. So when you look into it and you speak to people and you see what the reality is of pro coaching within pro sport, other things become other things are a little bit more valuable than the tracksuit. So that's probably the real reason why I didn't get into pro sport.
It's a massive status play. Like, it was huge for me. I wanted to work for the club that I could have played for if I'd been scouted on the right day. If the guy came to the right club, who knows what would happen. But that's like, and it was all about that for me. It was like, because I wanted to work for the best rugby team in English history at the time, and then that was it. And then when you get there, it's like, oh my god.
Yeah, and I think younger me, had I not gone to uni and done PE, and I'd gone to do sports science and S&C, pre-family, completely different generation, probably pro sport would have been the route I took, because that was just that was the vision. It's probably similar to the Gen Pop PT that dives straight into a commercial gym, because that's the pathway that we're told we have to go. Not that you have to go, but it's the one that everyone kind of pushes you into. I just think coming to it later gives you a different perspective on what you really want.
Do you remember when we were on a legacy call with Paul Holmes? And he, for anyone who doesn't know who Paul Holmes is, he's currently runs a private practice in London, but currently Francis Ngano's head of medical. And he said he sat down after leaving the UFC, and sat down with like the head of an international rugby program, and he said it came to the point where I had to choose my family or the job, and I chose my family. And the other guy said, I didn't do that. And because people get caught as well, they can get caught, and you go so far down, because you have to give up so much. You do get so far down this whole rabbit hole that when it's time to maybe move on and create a family for yourself, there's a lack of awareness of how to get yourself out of it. Because you're so far in it. It's like, well, this is all I know now.
And I think is also there's this I've not been in that, but I'm going to take experience from having worked in other industries and jobs before I came into coaching, which I think stood me in good stead for coaching as well. But I think also you fall into this false sense of security. Like, you feel like being in a pro club gives you security in your job. And to an extent it does give you more security, or perhaps perceive more security. You might be able to tell me differently from your experience, but it gives you this sense of you're getting paid at the end of the week or the end of the month. Whereas when you go out on your own, it's a very different thing. And I think you self-question how good you are at what you do more when you're when you are who you're, just you. There's no one else to fall back on. There's no one reviewing your work. There's no one telling you, this is working, this isn't working. You've got no one to call on, no one to, potentially, back you up. It's you, and it's only you. I think that you kind of buy into it, and it's like, well, if I'm going to leave this club, then I need to find another club to go to, and that club's got to give me something a little bit more than this one's giving me to make it worthwhile, but it can't give me anything worse than what I'm on. Whether that's salary or whatever that looks like. I think there is this, we get trapped in chasing something, but not really. It's never really scratches the itch. Not long term. It's great. It's great until you turn up and realize you're doing the same job in a different uniform.
I just
with slightly different people.
I just wrote down, does status equal security ? Because that's what I found. And I was at Wasps when they couldn't make payroll. And like, and a lot of people. I remember before I got there, they couldn't make payroll. My mate Ryan Hicks, who I work with, they cut the heating off to the building. They couldn't pay the heating. So they're in the winter and they were sat in all their outdoor gear inside doing work, and because they didn't put the heat on. And it's like they're the top English rugby team at the time, and they couldn't put the heating on. And yeah, so and I think that's when you are. I think there is a big illusion around it in any endeavor that when you are in a pro environment, that you are surrounded by people that have your back. And ultimately, the machine runs. The machine is moving, and yes, you will meet some nice people. I met some nice people. I met not as many nice people as disingenuous people in my experiences, but I met some wonderful people. But the thing moves. The thing moves, and it moves on, and that's something that's always to be considered. We go back, like why you didn't do it. Well, you had a family. Why are you going to give up? Why are you going to give up something that's with you for life over something that will forget you within 2 days? And it's a crazy trade-off. People that worked with wouldn't get maternity leave.
Well, yeah. I think the other thing is, by the time I come around to coaching, is I've realised I couldn't actually work for someone. That I got. I had this. The itch I was trying to scratch all along was wanting to work for myself and have my own rules, and it was just taking the lead. And I was trying to find that somewhere else, and was never really. And it took a long time for me to realise that that's what I was looking for, and it wasn't.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be running someone else's business. I didn't want to be. Looking after someone else. I didn't want to be picking up someone else's stress, and bringing someone else's stress home to my family, and having my family have to deal with that stress.
And also the levels of micromanagement that come with it as well.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. I think micromanagement gets a really bad rap, but I actually think to an extent, some micromanagement isn't a bad thing, because you want to make sure that shit's getting done. Like if you're, if you've got people that are saying they're going to do something for you and they're not doing it, then I think you're within your right to chase them up. But it's
shit.
but it's when it's when you're going above and beyond, and they're micromanaging you on something that's completely irrelevant. You just think, why am I here? Or you're going above and beyond, and they're micromanaging you on one thing, but they're not, you're not being appreciated on the other end, and those sort of things. But yeah, I didn't. And everyone that works for someone will sit there and say they can do it better. They can always, you can always see ways that things can be done.
Have you been on
Twitter? Yeah, exactly. But but it's then, I think it's then being brave enough, I guess, to actually put your money where your mouth is, and take it on and say, well, I'm going to go and do this better.
Yeah. I think one of the big appeals, and with the private side, like I remember, watching Zach Evanish on YouTube, and Elliot Hulse on YouTube, and DeFranco's back in the day, and so many others and they were all private guys making a difference and working with athletes, and they had like the NFL off season and stuff like that, and it's taken the best part of 15 years for the UK to start catching up with that from a youth adolescent population as well. The time has come now that this is like really readily available, very profitable, very financially rewarding as well, and also incredibly long term, which is awesome. I wanted to talk to you actually about just switching gears slightly on that, because a lot of coaches think you can't train athletes unless you're in a pro environment, and that's completely wrong. And we know that that's completely wrong. But you said something really important. I'd like you to talk about, if you can, is that the behavioral and like psychosocial elements of working with the types of people that you do.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting because it is incredibly overlooked. So, what do you think about, the psychology?
I mean, I think you said it there. Like, it's massively overlooked. I think it's not something that we consider enough, but
Mm,
we know that all if you were to look at a Gen Pop person, we would
yeah.
talk about and if you're talking Gen Pop weight loss,
Okay. Not Gen Pop athlete, not
well, no, I know.
non-professional athlete.
I'm going that way. If we were
Yes.
to compare it as a Gen Pop weight loss person, we would
Yeah.
throw in the bucket. What's their work stress? What's their family stress? What's their day to
Yeah.
day? What's stopping them from doing this? What's preventing them doing that? Why aren't they losing weight? The good Gen Pop weight loss PTs will look at everything.
Yeah.
Everything. Yet quite often when it comes to athletes, we completely overlook any of that. Like,
Yeah.
you just have to go on just have to go on social media after your team's had a bad game and look at how many people slag off the player,
Yeah.
as if they're some sort of superhuman, and they're not. They're just like me and you. They're just we're good at coaching, they're incredibly good at playing the game, but
Yeah.
there are things going on in the background that you're never going to know. And I think good coaching finds the balance in that, because I think something I learned a lot from you is that, and being on calls in Legacy with different guest speakers and bits and pieces, is that actually the fastest way to improve performance is to remove stress out the system. And those stresses come in multiple forms. They don't just come in, if we're, if you're deloading, or you're prepping before a big race. We've got to be balancing all those layers. We can't just be looking at, okay, well, we're just going to downturn the volume, or we're just going to downturn the intensity. Like, you've got to be looking what else is going on in their life. And I think, having been involved into a couple of semi-pro teams, like consulting within semi-pro teams, I think that's the big thing they miss. Like, we're not talking teams that necessarily have S&C departments. We're not talking about teams that see their players all the time. But they definitely overlook even the simplest things, like the body language of the player as they walk in the door on game day, and then completely misjudge their team talk or their feedback to that player. When you could see that they were already down before they started. They don't need telling that they're not doing enough. You need to balance that out. And
awesome.
And I think that's one of the big things with athletes is judge the room. Like, look at who you get walk in the door. And again, perhaps what's highlighted that even more is when I start working with rehab clients. You start working with rehab clients. You get an athlete or semi-pro athlete that picks up an injury. And look at how that behavioural and psychosocial, how that falls off a cliff. Anyone can coach an athlete that's on the up. Anyone can coach an athlete that's high. It's easy to bring someone down a peg, or not a peg, but to keep someone levels, to stop them going too high. It's much harder to pick an athlete up out the ground, out of the hole, or get in the hole with the athlete. To bring them out.
And to perform out of the non-novelty events, like being brought in to do some stuff for some combines, some popular combines, but there's NDAs on that. But how it's easy to get someone motivated for stuff like that. It's easy for a lot of those things. You just have to bake the cake well enough and structure it well enough to allow natural ability to take center stage.
Yeah.
And you said when you talked about like the semi-professional, the part-time environments, you know, these guys are playing football in the evenings and they work in the day, like a, you know, the GA world. That's what they do. That's what they do, and they perform at a very high level. Those athletes are serious. And my experience, so when I was in clubs, I always did a lot of S&C for the clubs I was playing for in like capacity. We'll sweeten your contract if you do the S&C. Yes, fuck it, why not? And the biggest mistake that they make is trying to replicate a professional environment when having no experience of what a professional environment is.
Yeah.
And or even maybe watching a couple like Inside the Lions DVDs. Like the only thing that's the same about a non-professional environment and a professional environment, well, I hope still so, is that they all go on the piss.
Yeah.
You know? And you can't stack. You can't keep stacking intensity and you know programming sequence, like all the organizational stuff of it. It's like you get a guy who's been up from 6 o'clock in the morning to go and work a 9-hour day, and then you want him to back squat for 45 minutes, do an S&C session before he does a 90-minute rugby session, to then get home for 11 o'clock. Like, it's wild.
Yeah.
And the stress and that holistic approach that you talked about, something popped into my head. And like in pro clubs, they just call the measure of that monitoring, and they'll do subjective monitoring to measure all of those things. That means nothing. Like it literally it doesn't create any adjustment from a personal perspective.
Yeah.
Because in pro environments, what they try to do is to peak to worst case scenario that they've got to last year and then operate at a capacity of that in season, irrespective of the adaptation that they're trying to create.
Yeah.
So all they're doing is trying to survive of a percentage of worst case scenario rather than maximal outputs and the things that support practice.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like it
Yeah.
blows my mind when you think of it like that. And learning, as you just said, you learn so much more about high performance when you're working with non-high performance people because there's too many exceptions. Now I'm conscious I've just turned into Gary Vee on his own podcast and started talking too much. So, but for you now, like, I think that's really important because a lot of coaches may think, oh, I can't work with athletes and I can't make money and I can't, you know, there's lots of these can't things. What, you know, for you, what was some big turning points along the way? And like for people's, you're 33?
34.
You're 34.
Yeah, 34.
And when did you start coaching?
When I was 29. Full-time, 29, 30.
Full-time 29. Amazing. So yeah, put some wax on that for people because, you know, if what I would love for people listening to this is to break some fucking beliefs about themselves because a 29-year-old who's gone through uni, coached in clubs, may have got fired, lost his job or chose his girlfriend over the tracksuit, may go, well, what the fuck do I do next? How do I get meaning from this?
I think the first thing is, you know, I would say I would ask the question, do you actually coach athletes in the club environment? Do you coach all those athletes in the club environment? Because, you know, from, you know, people I talk to and they've got, you know, experience in non-pro clubs is that you only coach the ones that want it. The ones that, you know, there's always going to be a percentage that don't think they need the S&C. They don't think they need, you know, or they think they know. That's no different in the private world. If you're good at what you do, you'll actually coach more athletes than you'll coach in the club environment. You have more, you have more, you know, and there are factors that you can't overlook, like where you decide to position yourself, where you decide to, you know, work from. You know, down on the South Coast in a little sleepy town, there's not loads of pro athletes available to you in a one-to-one capacity. Remotely, it's a little bit different. But I think if you're good at what you do in a pro club and you feel like you do a really good job in a pro club, you'll probably do an even better job when you aren't restricted by everything else, when you've got more time to play. And you'll work with the athletes that actually want it, is my experience. The athletes
And
that
so
come
what's the, I'm going to jump in here and I'm going to push you on a few things, because what's the difference, right? What's the difference between working with someone who is at the top level, right? As an S&C coach, what level of impact do you have on that person as opposed to a developing 19, 20, 21-year-old, for example? Let's do those two extremes. How much can you actually impact a top level pro at that stage?
my opinion, you ain't impacting them at all.
Yeah.
I genuinely think the guy that's at the top, that's been doing it, they're coming, they're at that absolute peak.
Yeah.
What and perhaps the way we do S&C is slightly different to how it's the reality of club, but what you do in the gym probably does more harm than good.
Yeah.
You actually probably take away more than you put in.
Yeah.
Because of the way we know S&C is structured.
Yeah.
Whereas a developing player has so much more room for progression. There's so many things they haven't learned. Even down to, if we just break it down into speed, how many developing athletes do we know that are lightning quick but just don't know how to use it on the field? And that's you can teach them that. They need nurturing through how they use what they've got. They need nurturing. There's you can pick up on there is room for development because they've got so much more to learn. Don't get me wrong, you're going to still get a freak at 19 that's gonna not know it. But I think the other thing is, if you sat down and spoke to a number of athletes that are coming to the end of their career and asked them what they wish, there's probably a lot of them that wish they took more on board when they were younger, when they thought they knew it all. Because I thought I knew it all when I was like 18, 19. I thought I knew I was going and what I needed. And reality is I probably needed someone with a little bit stronger hand than I had.
You said something there about the way that S&C is structured. I thought it's really interesting because it's such that's for me. I don't know what answer you're going to say. Hopefully, it's really good and profound. But it's the level of critical thinking that's required, and to actually start looking at the taught process. So, what do you think? Say, like a senior level, or just generally, how is S&C structured for development?
I think S&C it's seen as a silo. It's siloed away from the technical elements of the game. And I don't think there is enough joined up thinking between all the parties on how. So S&C chases results in the gym, and S&C chases scores and normative data and justifies its position based on outputs within certain tests that don't necessarily carry anything across the pitch or the field or whatever. And then the other side is, from my experience, unless you've got a very open-minded technical coach, you never really see the true benefit of either. You never see the true benefit of the S&C. Because like we said, when I said about the developing player, if they've got an incredible 40 yard, but they ain't got a clue how to use it on the pitch, we've had conversations before talking rugby where you watch them break the line and then turn back into trouble. That's where your S&C and your technical coach doesn't join up.
Or where you would consider the construct of special speed meeting tactical speed.
Yes.
As found in the sports speed system book.
That's the one.
I have to plug the shit out of it. It's money.
But I just think clubs are too siloed, and they have been.
And let's, like, you got S&C coaches listening to this, and you think, oh God, just slagging off the profession, but actually we're not. We're drawing like really important attention towards, like, for me, when I first started working and I was doing GPS and I was doing this and doing that, I was so frustrated by the technical coaches. Like, why don't they understand this? Why doesn't a physio get this? Why don't they understand this? Because it's all too much. It was all too much about me. It was all too much about me as an S&C coach and what I can do and what they don't understand.
Yeah.
It's all those ego-driven things where if we fucking turn it on its head, there's the other side of it where maybe we're not as important, but we can be really good at where we are important.
I also think that too often the player doesn't even understand it.
Yep.
Because if you, regardless of, and this is from personal experience.
Yep.
If the coaches can't communicate between themselves, what's going on? Like if the S&C can't communicate to the physio and the physio can't communicate to the technical coach what these things mean, the person that it matters to the most is being failed. Because if I run a really fast 505, I'm lightning 505, but when I get on the pitch, everyone's out-turning me.
Yeah.
Like, to me, that causes a conflict in the athlete, because the athlete's like, well, you're telling me good, I'm here, but where I need it, it's not working. And that probably ties back into that, then how do you manage the behavior and the emotional?
Yeah.
Because you're giving them mixed messages based on data that they have no understanding of.
Yeah, that's sick. I like that. And so, like, as we kind of draw this to a close, I want the listeners as well to really think about, how do you manage yourself in that process as well, as a coach, as a gym owner now, as a small studio, which is sick, by the way. Every time you go to Hastings, get onto Westy. How do you start to navigate your own personal process? Because the coach is the thing that's lost in all these situations. So how do you do it for yourself as a husband, father, coach, and as you before all that?
As in, how do I balance life? How do I balance me getting what I need?
Yeah. Out of all of those things, because it's vital.
I'll be honest. Like, when I first started, it was a struggle. I'd get it wrong. I'd be burning out at one end. I'd be neglecting people at the other end. And I think the key thing for me is now understanding that it's all sliding scale. Sometimes things have to take a back seat. Other times, and sometimes that is business. Sometimes that is coaching. Sometimes that's my own athletic aspirations, which I naively probably still have some of, but I also think you have to, because if you're not still playing the game, then you quickly lose understanding of what the game is, and for others. But yeah, there's I suppose two things: is understanding myself that it has to slide, but also being good at communicating with those around me why sometimes they take the back seat, why sometimes the business takes the back seat. And I think that's where I failed before, was communication, and just not trying to demand too much. It's finding that yin and that, like, we talk about the yin and the yang, like, if this is this, what's on the other side? Like, how are you balancing out on the other side? And also having someone in your corner. And I think this is the thing that, there's so many people have had their fingers burnt with bad mentors. And there's probably another podcast, but it's having someone in your corner that you can soundboard off and make sense of the things. Because, like I said earlier, as when you're out there on your own, you are on your own, and unless you've got someone you trust and someone that and whoever that is, as long as they're impartial, as long as they're impartial, that's the key thing. And you need someone that you can bounce ideas off, because, as Sam will attest to, I have 1,000,001 ideas 9 times out, like most of the time, but trying to actually put them there, and they might all be good ideas, but I'm doing them all in the wrong order. It's just having somewhere or someone to keep you on the straight and narrow and keep you focused and directed. I think it's
I like that. No, I think there's some really important things, because time is such a good marinator, of process, and you say that, and I think that hopefully people that are working in full-time environments have listened to this podcast, and they can resonate so much, because so much of my career as a practitioner in the full-time that I was in, I felt alone. I felt isolated. Like, we were told not to stop doing in-house CPD at one point. I was told to stop doing in-house CPD with the interns that I had. I had 4 that I was essentially managing. And I said, I can't stop doing it because I need them to help me.
Yeah.
It's on my lunch hour. And so it's I think it's wonderful that you said that, like, because if that ties into the silo approach as well, because you can be siloed within your team, and that's huge. So as we wrap up, what would you say to anyone, right, who's on the fence or wanting to? Well, actually, we're not going to any of your successes. People are like, well, what's he actually fucking done? What's he done? So what have you done now?
What have I done now?
Where are you at with your journey, mate?
So where are we now? We're opened a small studio in March, April time this year, which has grown to be very profitable very quickly. Nice membership base mix across Gen Pop, athlete rehab, injury rehab. I think, like I said, rehab has become the interesting thing. So, successfully rehabbed 2 patella tendon ruptures, a couple of ACLs, 2 Achilles ruptures, within like a group setting. Do those in a group setting because it's such a nice environment to coach rehab in. Work with a number of semi-pro players. Consulted at another club in the summer, which they're doing really well, but we've got 3 coaches contracted to deliver in the studio as well, which gives you a little bit more time off, or more time to work on the business rather than in the business. And I suppose the big win is I coach who I want to coach now. I'm in a position where I coach where I want to coach, and I get to spend time with my family when I want to spend time with my family, and I've got Christmas off. There's no Boxing Day games here.
Well, exactly, and I'll say for the listeners that you are definitely earning twice the amount of an average S&C salary and working half the amount of a typical S&C coach, which is to your testament, and working with athletes, and don't forget the youth. I think some listeners should understand that working with youth populations is a really good window of opportunity if you want to do, like, that's how I started with some of extra stuff, was starting youth programs, and they're really good. But one of the biggest wins that you didn't mention is that you went, and this is kind of like real for a lot of people, is you were able to book a trip. Tell people about that.
So I mean, I think when I opened my studio, I said to my wife that we wouldn't be having a holiday this year, just because there'd be too much time, too much money invested. And actually, I managed to build it up quick enough with a very trusted person, to help out, that allowed me to take a week out of a business I built, and it didn't burn down to the ground. So yeah, it's, I think that's one of the things, again, when you go out on your own, is you don't feel like you're obliged to have these things, and take that time off, but actually you deserve it, and you need it.
Yeah. And what was the
Gives you
big thing
perspective.
about that? Because remember, you got 2 kids as well, and so, because I want this message to hit home for someone listening to this, there'll be 1 out of the 100 that this will resonate with. How did you pay for that holiday?
What do you mean? Like, we pay with money that the business earns. Cash. Oh yeah, cash.
Not credit.
Yeah, straight up.
Yeah.
Money the business earned.
Exactly.
The money the business earned me.
Yeah, and that's huge. And I know, obviously, you've got someone who've been nurturing and working around you. And I think when the big fear of when you go out alone, like you will find someone in your local area who's just like you, or who wants to be with you. I had Sharky, I had Mark Stevenson, who just literally turned up out of nowhere, and he was with me for 10 years.
Yeah.
And that's some funny stories with that kid, but and he was perfect, and you will find that opportunity, and you don't, and just to listeners as well, you don't need a facility to do everything Wesley's doing, because he was doing most of it out of someone else's before. So the power is in your mind.
I suppose the other thing, just to add on, when we talk about he covered everything, we're not talking about just open gym. Like, the facility we run is small group PT, small group rehab, small classes, one-to-one. There's no open gym element to it. So it's, I've got someone there that I can trust to take on and look after clients for me as if they're their own. And that is a big weight off. If it's like an open gym environment, you can say, "Oh, we'll just get someone in," but these are fully coached sessions all the way through, that I've got someone that I can hand over to and take on, whether I want time off, whether I'm ill, whether I need to get something for my kids. That's where we're at the moment, and those for me are the wins. That's the big win.
That's awesome. Amazing. Yeah. So for listeners that want to reach out to you, maybe ask you some questions, they want to come and do a workout, how do they get hold of you? What's the best, easiest way to get hold of you?
Easiest way is probably Instagram. It's at Mike West Coaching, or pop me an email at mike@limitlessstudios.co.uk.
Awesome. There you go. There you go. Thanks. And for you bloody gorgeous listener, thank you for joining us. And I'll see you on the next podcast. Cheers. Hey there, podcast listeners. If you are serious about improving your athlete's sports speed and performance, I've got something game-changing for you right now. Imagine having instant access to all the tools, strategies, and insider secrets you need to systematically create speed gains over and over and over again, all in one place. I get it. Trust me. The internet is overloaded with information. You spend hours hunting for advice, and it's hard to know what works. But what if you had a proven roadmap, a proven system designed to build and improve sports speed, bridging the gap from the gym to the field, and even implementation to skills with fewer headaches? That is exactly why I've created the Sports Speed Insider after the successful publication of my book this year. This is definitely not a course. It's an exclusive coaching program where I walk you through in 10 minutes a week how to implement my revolutionary sports speed system. With weekly whiteboards, exercise breakdowns, and even training programs, you are going to be taken care of. And the best part, there's no noise, no guesswork. Just apply what I teach you in your environment immediately, for just 49 pence per day. And here's the deal. As a podcast listener, you get a special invite. Go to www.speedbysportland.com/sportspeedinsider and join us today and get exclusive training that is not there for public access. Plus, as a thank you, I've got some epic bonuses waiting for you. A full 12-week program, all my speed progressions, and an unseen London Speed Masterclass. Also, as an insider, you'll be the first to know about events, seminars, and receive exclusive insider discounts. But this is only for a limited time. Don't wait. Head over to www.speedbysportland.com/sportspeedinsider now. Remember, success loves speed. If you've been waiting for the right moment to unlock real sports speed, this is it. Let's make it happen together in the Sports Speed Insider for just 49 pence per day, and I will see you on the inside.